Welcome to episode 17 of season 5 of Whole Lot of Wolves. I'm your host, Joshua Buckley, with my co-host, Paula Page.
Greetings.
We got Alex in New York.
Hello.
Again. Danny on the socials in Baltimore.
Let's do this.
And back from Atlanta Wolves, Kurt Zellner, otherwise known as the original Bip. How's it going, Kurt?
Doing well. Suffered through the match today, but other than that, my Illini are remarkably competitive this season, so I guess I can't have two good things in 1 year.
Right. Well, guys, I don't even know what to say. 4-0 loss to Everton today. That came off of the 4-2 really debacle over the weekend against Bournemouth. Paul, I don't know about you. I was a big supporter of Gary O'Neill. I think this is it. You cannot get embarrassed this bad 2 weeks in a row, and especially embarrassed 4-0 against a team who is fighting against relegation, just like we are.
That's right. I'm going to defend Gary O'Neill. And you
yeah, okay. Plot twist.
I am. I'm going to say that he's tactically naive, inexperienced, out of his depth, outcoached by the likes of Sean Dyche. And why? Because he was the cheapest appointment. It's not his fault. Inexperienced coach, nice guy. I think give him a few seasons in the Championship, he could pick up a team towards the bottom half, maybe put a decent side together, get them in the playoffs and bring a team up. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, he'll be an established coach in the Premier League. But the time to do that, the time to learn on the job certainly isn't now. So it's not Gary O'Neill's fault. It's Matt Hobbs' fault. It's Jeff Shee's fault. It's Fosun's fault for putting this whole shit show together in the first place. Now, I'm pretty convinced based on tonight's sound bites that he knows what's coming. But my biggest fear is that those jokers in charge who dangled the carrot at one point of Michael Beale even, what's the chances of them getting the next decision right? That fills me with dread. I'm not looking forward to the news because I'm not looking forward to what shit they're going to pull next. And the last time this happened with Large into Lopetegui, at least you had that somewhat reassurance that he was at the time credible coach, good fit for the team that we had, and ultimately did the job that was needed. Now, I'm petrified of the decision that they're going to make. I think the only way we've got a way around it is potentially go in maybe with somewhat of a tail between their legs back to Mendes and the Mendes carousel to try and turn this shit around.
Ooh, the Mendes carousel. Ooh. Kurt, what do you think? Was that the last straw for you?
I think ideally it probably is the last straw. I think Paul's right. I don't know if you can put all the blame on Gary, just from the standpoint he's working with maybe no truly Premier League quality center backs. And then to add to the challenge, we just extended Gary in August. So maybe I'm naive, but there's a part of me that sees how cheap Fosun have been. And to buy someone out that you just extended, 5 months ago, it feels like there could be some risk there that we get a little bit more Gary because of the fact that we really just don't want to spend the money to buy out someone's contract who's under contract till 2028. So I think that should have been the last straw, but there's a part of me that really believes that Fosun aren't concerned enough about winning right now that we may see a couple more matches before any change happens.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know. We still may be paying Losh. I mean, we don't know what the terms were there.
Who's doing
Definitely
really
played-
well right now in Portugal, unfortunately.
Probably because he has a number 9, right, Alex?
Never lost with a true striker. He's got a Greek 9 as well. So
Never forget.
What do you think, Alex? Is this it?
I mean, I hope it is. I hope it is. And I've loved Gary O'Neill, and I still think there is a world in which he becomes a good manager at another club, but he's not really the manager for Wolves anymore. And I was really thinking about it during this game. It's been a very long time, since Raul was at his heyday, that you'd be getting all these notifications on your phone. Not that football is played on paper and fantasy football and stuff, but like we have one of the most informed attacking players in England right now. We have a number 9 who is on pace to score a very respectable amount of goals for his first year in the league. We have scored before today, well, actually after today, 22 goals, which is more than half of the Premier League and more than like some teams that would be widely considered one of the best teams in Europe. You cannot argue that the talent is not there. Now, whether or not Gary O'Neill got the best out of those attacking players, like if that's true, like so be it. But the flip side of that is like you can't concede goals at the rate that they are conceding them. And it is inexplicable to say that we have the type of attacking talent that we have. It's clicking at a rate it hasn't clicked since since Raul was like one of the best 9s in the league, and be fighting for relegation and being rock bottom. Like you can't. At the end of the day, it's just like Wolves have more talent, arguably, than they've ever had since they've come up.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the best team because Nuno's team was a true team, right? They were cohesive, but they have more talent than we've probably ever seen them have. And they're as bad as they have ever been since they came up and since many of us started following them. So that's it. Like, that's all you need to know. Like, you just need someone who's going to get more out of them. So I think we've reached that time, and like this is the stretch we've all been waiting for. So we're out of time. We're out of excuses. This is it. Like this run into Christmas is where we were going to try to survive in the league and not have to be scrapping for through all of spring of 2025 to stay up. And the longer you wait, I feel like that the more and more that's going to be the case. This is going to be a fight till the end.
Okay, Danny, you're up.
All right. I guess in some ways, maybe some people who follow me expect me to defend Gary O'Neill, which I'm not really going to do, but I will defend the idea of Gary O'Neill. And for what it's worth, I do think it's very much time to move on. I just think that at this point where Wolves are at as a club, I still feel that a manager like Gary O'Neill, let's say, is a wise choice, and I still understand why he was brought in and even why he was extended in the summer. Probably not to the extent that he was extended, and which is our current pickle. But I think that like a player, a manager who's like more player focused, who has less responsibilities outside of that, I think suits, unfortunately, where Fosun have put the club right now. And I, like Paul, I have some reservations about what comes next, because even though, I mean, Graham Potter might be like kind of a dream appointment, that'd be amazing. But at the same time, someone who's more of a project manager, a project coach, is he really going to be given the tools? Are we just going to find ourselves in the same place in 6 months or a year? And so the idea of having a manager like Gary O'Neill who can be popular with the players and who can kind of just get them doing the thing that they're good at, I think is still a good idea. But I mean, obviously, as everyone's talked about so far, that just hasn't been happening. And like Alex said, it's about cohesiveness. We've just looked completely disorganized for several games throughout the season. I think there was a lot, I could very much kind of forgive even like the collapse at Brentford, to say like, oh, well, we've had a really tough beginning. There's a lot of confidence lost, even when you're losing games to teams that you ought to lose to. But during this period, I mean, this was the time to sort of rally the troops and say, okay, season starts now. Let's look like a unit. let's play like we used to play. And it's funny, before the game kicked off and we saw Gonzalo Guedes was going to start, I looked back at the last time he started, and it was against Arsenal, 2-0 loss under Steve Davis. I was just thinking about how even under Steve Davis, that it was still a more cohesive team than what we're currently seeing on the pitch. And so as much as the players probably still very much like him, he's just not getting what he needs to get out of the players at this point.
Okay, so it seems to be a pretty clean sweep then. He needs to go. But Paul, who do we get in spot in his place? I know you don't trust that they're going to get right the person, but if you were, who would you get?
I think it comes down to me that the two avenues they go. I think Graham Potter, ideally, in terms of having that English manager, will have been in similar situations, but then we'll hopefully got that organisation to both gel with the team, but then at the same time get the best out the likes of Cunha and the Flair players. So that's probably my ideal avenue. I'm a little skeptical. I think he could be worried about what our front office is like. But then the flip side of that is he did go to Chelsea, and they're just as much of a shit show as far as that goes. So who knows? But potential question marks if he did turn the Leicester job down that was reported. Is there that much of a difference right now between Wolves and Leicester? So that's an issue. I think Moyes will probably talk a little more later about probably a safe pair of hands, but has he got I've not really got the trust in him to come in and turn a team that's firmly on a downward spiral back around. And then the one for me potentially is, again, if you're raiding that Mendes stable, you're looking at that avenue, is Sergio Conceição in the question. And just looking at him, I probably wouldn't want him as coach. I'll probably actually start to play him the way the team are doing right now. So if we can get him as player manager, we'll probably be okay.
Stu is on tonight. How's it going, Stu? And he brought up an interesting name, Vasco Matos. What do you think, Danny?
I won't say that I've watched a ton of his football. I don't have a lot, as one might expect. I don't have a lot of strong opinions about who comes next. I feel like Paul said, I feel like I'm just not very hopeful that that the powers that be will make the right choice. And like Paul said, I think like the part of the risk with someone like David Moyes is, I think, Gary O'Neill was a suspect appointment at one point, but one thing that he had really going for him, and everybody was feeling pretty down at the time. But one thing he had really going for him was that, we all had kind of a common enemy. I'm sure a lot of the players didn't hate Lopetegui or anything, but still, like, there was that sort of feeling of like, no one thinks that we are going to do anything. Lopetegui's bailed, and the whole media thinks that we're relegated, even though we have like a perfectly decent squad. And that was a really powerful motivator, as we saw. And I just don't think that whoever comes in next is going to feel the same way. Even though when Lopetegui came in, there was a similar vibe about, being dead and buried. But, I don't think the next manager is necessarily going to have that. If you have someone who's a bit of a no name, can they really bring in? And I've moved on from Vasco Matos too. Don't come at me. I'm just saying that, like, like you're sort of like replacement level. People have, made lots of jokes about Steve Cooper coming in or whatever. It's just like, those are the kinds of things where it's like, yeah, I mean, I guess if he can just shore it up and he has a 6-month contract, that's fine. But like, Otherwise, you're heading into a disaster where you have a bunch of players who kind of really liked Gary O'Neill, and even if they didn't like the results, you bring in someone who's super uninspiring, and we're still not getting great results. Like, how are they going to react to that?
Yeah, I want to just pose a question. It kind of relates to something that Danny was talking about, but also what Paul said when he started mentioning Graham Potter, and a little bit off of Stu's name nomination. We joke all the time about like how a Spanish name or a Portuguese name might sound more interesting than like the English equivalent, and maybe how vice versa with players, right? How there'd be an English tax on players. Do we want another English manager? Like, I feel like I really enjoyed it. And I mean this with all due respect. I'm not trying to offend you, Paul. But I also think to some degree, Gary O'Neill has gotten a lot of leeway because he just seemed like someone we really wanted to work. Like, he was worse than Bruno Lage, and people were way more out on Lage. And I don't know if it was a language barrier thing, if it was like a likability thing, but there's part of me that's annoyed by that because like I jokingly was texting after Ruud van Nistelrooy interim managed one game for Man United, like fire O'Neill now because this is going to be the next guy to get a Premier League job, and he already did. Like we're missing the boat. Like there's guys who probably were just too late to get to, and I'm just using Van Nistelrooy as an example, but like I just wonder if a non-English manager would have gotten as much leeway as Gary O'Neill has gotten, and if we want to go down that road again. Or do you look elsewhere? Because like, it doesn't even have to be a name. Like Hurzeler was not a name. Okay. He was someone who got St. Pauli promoted but he had an identity, like, I don't care what your nationality is, just have an identity. I don't know. What's Graham Potter's identity as a manager? Like, I still struggle to figure that out, like with some of the teams that he managed. But anyway, sorry. I'm wondering if Gary O'Neill's Portuguese equivalent would have gotten nearly as much leeway and as he got over time, over the last 9 months or whatever it's been.
You know what got Gary O'Neill a lot of leeway was that interview after the Man City match.
Monday Night Football.
God, yeah, going on.
That got him so much leeway because we were like, after a big win, and here's a guy and he's showing these tactics, and everybody's like, oh, here's somebody that's like not a complete dick to the media and is out there and he's got ideas and blah blah blah.
I also think
that interview had never happened.
I also think this is a huge tangent, but I'm loving this huge tangent, so I'm going to go with it, which is that I think that at the time too, I mean, everybody knew that Southgate was probably on his last tournament, and there's like a real like reaction. It seems like as an outsider to like sort of perceive negative tactics, and to see a young British manager who is like, being very pragmatic, but being attacking when he can, and then play Man City and come up with this bespoke defense against them and beat them, is sort of like it just like it baited all the like most vocal parts of the media, to love what he's about. And like Alex said, I still think that like there's a possibility he ends up being that manager in England or for England or something, but he's still very young and it's clearly not now.
They should make him have to go on Sky Sports and do the same breakdown and tell us what went wrong against Everton. Forget the tactical masterclass. Talk to us about this, Gary.
Kurt,
I think he's going to
go ahead.
Point to the lack of center back depth, and I think that's what is, even if he gets fired, I think he's going to say, look what you had me do. My options were Lamina or Alfie Pond, and I think unfortunately, I think Lamina was one of the issues in this setup today as well as over the weekend. So I think he has an excuse that's going to work pretty well as soon as they do make the decision to move on. My belief, though, is I think people liked Gary because he proved people wrong. He was this up-and-comer. People saw the upside there. He did seem to handle himself well with supporters, better than Lope or even Lage. But I'm not out on someone who's not English. I realize that the cultural barrier does seem to show up with how people interact with supporters. But even like a Marcelo Gallardo, I think there's an element of Nuno was sort of the liaison to Portuguese players. Maybe you want a manager that can be that for South American players. Maybe there's another sort of pocket where the manager can play a role in attracting talent. I don't know. It just feels like if we go for one of the traditional English managers, I think you're going to know what you get. And I think that probably caps some of the upside. And it forces you to sort of match that manager's expectations.
Kurt, who would be the worst case scenario manager, and why is it Steve Cooper?
I was going to say Steve Cooper, and not because of the way he looks, but I just think from an excitement standpoint, I think you need someone almost like a Gary who has the upside, where you feel like you're getting someone at the right point in their career where this could be where they pivot to be sort of a tactical genius. And I think that's where you're right in bringing up that Man City sort of commentary he gave, because it made people feel like, wow, for once, we lucked out into someone who's on the way up. And it sort of feels like Nuno. I really think Nuno was one of those managers where we probably got him in the right point in his career before he started to sort of become a little bit more lackluster and fall back into a more defensive team that got boring. But I think most of us would say, hey, Nuno would be an awesome manager to have right now, given where we're having weaknesses in the team.
Paul, here's a question for you. Why is it that with our managers lately, they do better with the the previous managers' players than they do with their own? It seems like we get through a summer and they start getting their own players, and then it goes to shit. So why is it like they can make it work? Like Lopetegui kind of made it work with Lodge guys. I know he got a few extra, but Gary O'Neill made it work with Lopetegui guys. Why is that?
I think you got that new managerial bounce is a big factor there. So I think that makes a difference, at least initially. And I think that's where you saw a lot of O'Neill, especially like the first half of last season when it really kicked in. That if he is that player's coach, then that was starting to show through. He wasn't being as found out as much as he is now for the naiveties and the lack of tactical nous, because he was still a relatively unknown quantity to the bulk of the other managers. So I think that makes a factor. But I think what we also have to consider, and this is the chipping away, this is the erosion of the team and of the identity, is come like this summer, he's playing with different tools because they've been forced upon him. In that Neto's gone, that was an undoubted match winner, and even combination of Forbes, Guedes, Bellegarde, Rodrigo Gomez, none of those have shown anything anywhere near the quality that's needed to even lace one of Pedro Neto's boots, probably on an injured leg. So that factors into it as well, that there's been that constant erosion. Look at goalkeepers right now. Look at the standard that we had with Patricio versus Sarr, Johnston, whomever. That's a marked shift from that pinnacle of where Patricio was at. Look at Willy Bolly, when he was in prime form.
Willy Bolly.
Size. Yep. All of these players that, like Willy Bolly's in and around the Forest team, squad players, not starting as much, but it's that type of quality that's fallen away across the team. And for sure, we've made it up in some areas, like Cunha, like Joe Gomez is showing potential, but it's not like a game in, game out Ruben Neves potential each week. So that factors into it as well. And all of that comes down to is ownership, investment, or lack thereof. And again, that's you can be the best manager in the world. There's only so far you can take it when you're constantly getting that type of erosion.
Yeah, I mean, to pick up on that a little bit, I think first of all, to Josh's question, there's certainly an element of like people, the managers that come in the middle of a season, they have a mentality of like I have to use what I'm here, and then I feel like there is a very common pattern once you get past that initial phase, and that's sort of like the test for a lot of managers is okay, it's your team now. And if a player has stayed or a player has come in, that's a sort of tacit approval from you. Can you still make it work? And I think even there are better managers than O'Neill that have failed that test also, where it's just like they start to build these match day squads and these tactics based on sort of what they thought they should have or what, like what the players that they ought to have. And I'm no tactico. I can't tell you on a chalkboard, where he's going wrong in that regard. But it just feels like disjointed. I mean, we joked earlier about the Bruno Lage thing with the number 9, and it's just like, okay, but you had enough to stay up, and like I know you wanted this one thing, but you didn't have to keep persisting with this. And I don't really have like a ton of specific criticism for O'Neill. I just think that he's been very naive, especially even during a period where we are supposed to, quote unquote, lose a bunch of games. And I think that if he had been less naive, players like Forbes and Rodrigo Gomez could have gotten more minutes, even in garbage time in games we were losing or something. But it's just, even in a period where we were expected to win almost no games, we were still somehow fighting fires. And that, in a lot of ways, has like contributed to the pressure that he suddenly finds himself in, despite, going 4 matches unbeaten, like the fact that that 2 losses can suddenly throw that into disarray, speaks to how before then we've been a bit naive.
So, Paul, regardless of who the manager is from here on out, whether it's going to be O'Neill, whether it's going to be somebody else, I think there's 3 big questions that have to be answered for anybody. And I'll ask you the first one. Is the answer to shore up the defense currently on the roster? Like, nothing seems to be working. But we have to find some solution until January. So what is it?
3 centre backs who are actually centre backs. That's their core position, because the solution's not in the squad right now. None of them have really got the ability to play in a back 4, it appears, and it's been shown. I think time and time again, you've got a bunch of decent centre backs within there that, next to the right partner, will be perfectly adequate for a mid-table Premier League team. I think today and the season as a whole is pretty much shown that Dawson's shot. So that's got to be...
I don't know what you're talking about. Dawson scored 2 goals today, Paul.
He's Everton's second top scorer, I think. So
Yeah.
He's doing something right. But it's that, we need what Dawson we need what Dawson offered when he came in, but 10x that, because we need someone that can dominate and organise and effectively carry the rest of the defense. Be that leader. That is going to be so difficult to try and get in January, massively.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Kurt. The next question, I feel, and I'll ask you this one: what needs to happen at keeper? Do they go back to Johnson? I mean, Saw's been god awful the last couple games and got in a fight with a fan in the stands at halftime of Saturday's match.
Yeah, so I'm probably one of the bigger defenders of Saw out there. I really, when I look over the last 2 matches, I really don't put him at fault. Maybe he could be more aggressive on some of these set pieces, but I think actually it's really the defense and sort of what you mentioned, having an organizer on defense, that makes a big difference. I mean, you look at the pass from Dawson that ended up being a penalty. Maybe you could blame Saw on the penalty that he gave up over the weekend, but at the same time, I think it should have been Lamina who gave him some idea that there was someone coming up behind him. So I'm not out on Saw. I don't like what I saw from Johnson. I don't think he's nearly as good as Saw. Maybe he's a better distributor. But honestly, I feel like Saw probably gives you enough that if you could shore up the defense, I don't think we'd be having the conversation about keeper. And actually, I think the only reason any of the keeper stuff came up at the beginning of the season is I think Fosun thought they could sell him for Saw for more and bring in Johnson cheaply and cash that out. So I think unfortunately we shouldn't have brought in a keeper, especially not a keeper that's not on the same level as Saw. But I don't think this is really where fixing the team really needs to occur.
It's funny, they've always gotten rid of players in the past and haven't had that backup lineup. And we're like, like anytime Fabio's gone out, or this time they actually had the replacement lined up, and then the sale fell through. They can't get anything right. And
But
Danny,
think how bad it would be without Saw, because I think some of these matches.
Could it be worse? Could it be worse?
Maybe not over the last two, but I think there's been matches where Saw has helped us that Sam really didn't give us much at all.
I would argue that I'm not that he was great today. We are really, really piss poor aerially, and Johnson does not come off his line and claim balls. So Saw may do that and punch it out and not clear it the way he needs to, or make some type of mistake doing that. But Johnson would just be doing the same thing, picking the ball in the back of his net, never moving off his line, with
100%.
Nobody getting their head on the ball. And Dawson used to be the guy to do that for us, and he can't do that now either. We're so bad in the air. It's really laughable. So, I mean, Johnston wouldn't fix it. I'm with Kurt. Like, absolutely not. He would just be sat there.
Did anyone watch the under 21s game where Tom King played? How's he looking these days?
Oh man,
We're worse in the air than John Denver, guys.
Good Lord.
And the third question, I feel like whoever's the manager, Danny, is going to have to answer is, who is that third attacking player that goes up there with Strand, Larson, and Cunha? Because every time somebody gets in and they've had an awesome impact off the bench, Sarabia, awesome impact, comes in the starting lineup. Bellegarde, doing really good off the bench, comes in. Same with Geddes today. I barely even knew he was on the pitch. So who is that third guy?
Yeah, and by the way, this is just a general statement about fan sentiment, which I know is a lot of shouting into the void, but just because a player hasn't been playing and they scored a goal off the bench doesn't mean that they deserve to be starting. And we saw today
Thank you. We saw today why Gonzalo Geddes struggles to get starts. I like him as a player. Like, he has a lot of talents, but I also understand why he hasn't been trusted in a team where our pressing structure is so important to us. It's because he kind of doesn't do it very well, and that's why he was mostly through the middle when we were out of possession. Anyway, that's a separate issue. It feels like, because I don't know that, like, I honestly am not super bothered about the front line, because as much as I think in some ways it's kept Gary O'Neill in the job, but I think that Mateus Cunha will carry us through the season. He honestly could possibly carry us through the season, even if Gary O'Neill stays the entire time. And so I think you play the right player for the right game to play with those two. I think almost going back to a previous point about the troubles that a new manager is going to have is, what does he do with this makeshift back line? I still think you can find a combination that's going to work perfectly fine, at least good enough. But also, what do you do with three goalkeepers who all think that they're at least number two, if not number one? And what do you do with a midfield where, Tommy Doyle hasn't even gotten, significant minutes until today, when we were literally just throwing everything into it, trying to get something. And so those are the questions I have, how does he, how does a new manager, or Gary O'Neill, because we're talking about this like he's already gone, but he's not.
how do they deal with these squad imbalances? That's what people mean when they're talking about balance is, just having the right players for the right places and also not carrying players who expect to be stars. I mean, this is like some armchair psychology, but I feel like, Sarabia coming in to start, it's like he expects to be starting, and maybe rightly so because of what he's done in his career. But then whenever he's on, he's super petulant about, misplaced passes to him, decisions that don't go his way, whatever. The only time he's ever performed for us is mostly when he's coming off the bench and he's trying to prove something. And I don't know if that's just him personally, but, it's just like these are the issues that we're going to have. Also, I like to point out, Todd just pointed out that Big Sassy's almost back from injury. So there's another problem.
Because if there's anybody that can help with the press defense, it's Big Sassy.
Can he play center back? He's quite tall.
Only for 45 minutes.
Yeah. I just, one last thing, you asked previously who would be the worst choice as a new head coach, and maybe the best choice. This might be both of them. Recently, a quote from a top manager who's won multiple Premier League titles.
Oh boy.
I think the best thing I have to do is when I leave Fenerbahce, I go to a club that doesn't play UEFA competitions. If any club in England from the bottom of the table needs a coach in 2 years, I'm ready to go. Maybe we could move that timetable up for Jose Mourinho.
I'm so here for it.
We'd get relegated, but I think that there's an outside chance he would stay even in the championship, and there might not be a better season than Jose Mourinho managing in the championship.
I'd be curious to hear Judah and Keen's reactions to that one. I don't know if they'd be. One more question, Alex. Why do the announcers hate Wolves so much? I knew immediately. Like, I turned on the match, and within the first minute, I was like, oh, it's going to be one of these fucking games. Because, they even sat there and were like, Wolves wearing their black kits for who knows what reasons.
Okay, I'm going to defend another unpopular figure here. This is ridiculous. We're wearing black away at a team that wears dark blue. Meanwhile, all the supporters this winter are wearing black coats. Like, if anybody was on the far side, you couldn't see them at all. It's a ridiculous choice. We should be wearing gold in that fixture. I'm sorry.
Hey, the black is the away kit. They're away.
I do not care.
I agree that. Is this the same guy? I don't know if it's the same guy. I should remember names. I remember names of many broadcasters, but there was a guy who went way out of his way to absolutely hate Wolves, to the point where and it was very obvious that someone at halftime spoke to him because he was so negative about Wolves' play, and they were way better than they were today. That he started complimenting the most random things in the second half, anything positive we could say about Wolves, because you could tell they were like, all right, dude, you got to pipe down.
Piping on
I don't know. Yeah. So it does feel like if it's not a Jackie Oatley, Dave Edwards special, that it's either going to be someone who doesn't really know anything about Wolves or someone who outwardly hates Wolves for some reason, but that's okay. I'm here for it.
And the thing with Jackie is she's a Wolves fan, but she's not a Homer Wolves fan. She does a fantastic
she's fair.
job.
Yeah, she's fair.
Well, I would say that in some ways, she sometimes is more critical because she knows the problems. She knows where the skeletons are,
Yeah, that's very true, I would say. So anyway, I don't know who's going to be calling all these Monday games because it's the Monday game. Do we get do we get the A team? Do we get some of the Peter Drury specials? Probably not, right? I want to know what poetry he has written up.
When if we're truly in they'll sometimes put him on 17th versus 18th situation.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, guys. Well, speaking of Monday's match, it's at 3 p.m. Monday. That's Eastern time. 2 p.m. for me and Paul in Central time. And joining us to preview that West Ham game is Brawley Darbin, co-host of the West Ham Way USA podcast. So Brawley, how's it going?
Good. Do we have to talk about it? Can we just call it quits now?
Yeah, so we figured You guys are pretty much in the same spot as us. I mean, we were thinking this could be the El Sacico
Yep.
coming up Monday, but it may not even get to that point. Like, is Lopetegui going to be there Monday?
Yes, I think he will be. I think you guys have probably already talked about it, but is the real question is, will Gary O'Neill make it to Monday? Because I think he's even under more
We
pressure.
may have mentioned it once or twice already.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have already discussed it, but yeah. Lopetegui will still be there probably. And I'm not as anti Lopetegui as everyone else is. But it's just one of these things where how much time do you need before things are settled? Hey, be quiet, buddy. Sorry, I've got my 3-year-old son walking in here.
No worries.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not as ready as the majority of our fans to pull the plug on him just yet. But I mean, you guys have experienced him. I don't think it was particularly great under him. I know he did okay with you guys, but yeah, I'm so indifferent at this point. Who would have thought, the stateside cup participants would be so in such poor form this year? Us, Palace, and you guys all struggling in the bottom end of the table. So yeah, I don't even know at this point, but to answer your question, a long way around, yes, I think he's still going to be there.
So Brawley, it's often mentioned by commentators and the like, the absence of Max Kilman and the defensive frailties that's potentially brought about as far as we're concerned. So your defense has been a little better than ours, but what's been your take of Kilman so far?
I think he's been superb, actually. He's probably been one of our better signings. Lately, he's been a little more shaky than he has at the beginning of the season. We are shipping a lot of goals, but hey, be quiet. But I'm a Max Kilman fan, so I think he would probably be helping your defense right now. I'm sure you guys are probably wishing you still had him in your back line. But yeah, he's been good.
So since we're in the same boat as far as wanting a new manager, well, I guess you're kind of still in on them, but who would be your choice if they choose to move on?
Yeah, I'm sure we probably have a similar list of names that we would potentially hire. My number one, if the issue is our owners don't pay compensation to get someone out of a job, and as we know, in the middle of a season, it's almost impossible to get someone out of their current job. My number one, going back to when we got rid of David Moyes, was Thomas Frank at Brentford. I would snap him up in a heartbeat if good. He's got Premier League experience. He seems to be a player's coach, which I think Lopetegui just doesn't seem, and Moyes certainly wasn't that. He seems to be a guy that the players enjoy playing for. So if I could have my dream pick, it would be Thomas Frank. Now, if we're going for out of work guys, I think Graham Potter's right up there. I think he's probably itching to get back into football. He did well at Brighton. Not so well at Chelsea, but I don't think Chelsea, they're now starting to get it right, but the revolving door and the amount of players in and out of Chelsea, I don't think hardly anyone was going to succeed there at that time. I would certainly take Graham Potter. I like Edin Terzic out of Dortmund. He was our assistant for a while, so he knows the club. And kind of out of the blue name, if you were asking me one, there's a guy named, I don't know if you've heard of or follow the French league at all, but there's a manager named Will Still, who is a West Ham fan and has done extremely well. Supposedly got his managerial background from playing Football Manager. Just seems like an awesome dude. And if I were going to do anything, and I'm sure you guys would agree, I'd rather go young and get a young manager in who players are going to enjoy playing for, and just take a shot on someone rather than, you know, has been like for us, Lopetegui. He managed Real Madrid. He managed Spain. Like, he's already reached the pinnacle. Sure, he managed Wolves for a minute, but so that gave him the Premier League experience, box tick. And that was, it seems like the same thing we did Pellegrini 4 or 5 years ago now. Same thing. He managed Real Madrid, Manchester City. Like, I don't want guys that have peaked. I'm trying to find guys that are actually on the way up. That's kind of the manager that I would, and maybe Graham Potter goes against that just a little bit with the Chelsea job, but yeah, but Will Still would be awesome. I would love to get Will Still down there, but I don't think that'll happen. And I think it's more likely we end up with a guy like Steve Cooper. It would be the most lame, boring acquisition you could get. So, and you guys, I mean, I don't know who you guys would end up with if
Not Steve Cooper, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, when this podcast comes out, you listen to the first half of it and listen to what we think about young up and coming managers.
Yeah, well,
and the perils of that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have had a rough day, and I thought we had it bad the past fixture with the Leicester game, but yeah, today I don't know if any manager can survive a 4-0 defeat to Everton under this current Everton. So.
So, Brawley, just to spin that totally on its head in our respect, could you see David Moyes coming to Wolves in the state we're in and keeping us up?
For sure. Now the question would then become: I would spin that question back around on you. Would you want someone like David Moyes?
I think to keep us up, we probably would do.
The
long term again.
So if you look what he did with us, he managed us twice, 2 stints. He kept us up the first time we went with Pellegrini. Then we came crawling right back to him. I think a manager like David Moyes would do very well at a club like Wolves. Would he be able to take you guys to Europe like he did with us? I don't know. I think it would depend on your owners investing a little bit more than they have probably. But David Moyes is a good manager. If you're in a pinch and you need someone to get the motivation up, find your best 11, and it's not going to be pretty, you're not going to play super sexy stuff, then, you know, you can stomach David Moyes. For us, when he was at his peak, when we were going to the Europa League and winning the Conference League, we played really well on the counterattack, and you're not going to enjoy much possession. You're probably going to end up with most games between 30 and 40% possession. And it's not going to be very pretty to watch. By the end of his reign, I was ready for it to be done. And I think he was ready for it to be done as well. We were so bad last year. I mean, we were really bad. And then we brought in 9 new players this year. So how is a manager like Lopetegui expected to succeed when you bring in so many new faces? So a long way around, can I see David Moyes being a reasonable appointment for you guys? Yes. And if he ended up there, I would not be shocked in the slightest. I think I would say you guys would comfortably stay up with him, probably.
Sold.
Yeah. I think you could do much worse than David Moyes. I'll put it that way.
Well, Brawley, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. And for your other special guest.
Yeah. Hayes, you can say hi now. Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. Can you do us one favor?
Yeah.
Can you say up the wolf?
No, you say come on, you irons. Can you give them the hammers?
Wolves are way cooler.
Yeah, you know, he knows every word's the bubbles. So I've taught him young. His first outfit he ever came home in was a West Ham kit. So there's no turning back at this point for Hayes, unfortunately for him. So.
Okay, well, that's a shame you did that to your son. But then again, we're masochists over here. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Good luck on Monday.
Hey.
buddy. Good luck Monday. I'm sure it's going to be
A shit
awful
show.
to watch, but let's see.
Yep.
Yes. Hey, thanks, Brawley.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
So, guys, to talk about preview this game, I don't even know if we can really preview what the lineup's going to be and stuff. We don't even know who the manager's going to be. So how about we just go straight to the predictions and the standings, huh? You guys good with that?
Yeah.
All right. Nobody got points last week because Wolves sucked worse than we do. So there we go. Danny still clearly in first with 12 points. Alex with 8. Paul in the guest spot with 4 points. And then I'm Southampton right now at 3. So, all right, Kurt, what are you predicting? You're on mute.
I think unfortunately we will still give up a lot of goals. I don't see that changing. So I think it's very realistic to say we're going to lose 4-2. And I don't think West Ham's good. I just think suddenly the floodgates have opened, and if you put any pressure on us, our defense will give you chances, numerous chances in the first 15 minutes.
All right, Danny.
Yeah, somehow I'm still in first, despite I think I forgot to put in a prediction for Everton.
Yeah.
No, you said 3-0 Wolves.
Oh, did I? Oh, you're right. That was a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, I have no idea what's going to happen, like all of us, and I think that I will default to just the funniest thing happening, which is Wolves win 4-3, and the lead changes multiple times in there. I'm partly going with a Wolves win because I'm one of the OG Lopetegui haters, and I'll be honest, I'm not proud, of who I am in these moments. But I watched that West Ham game against Leicester, and I derived probably more joy out of his facial expressions than I have from most of the Wolves games this season. So that's what I'm looking forward to, even if it's just us scoring a goal and they end up winning it. But yeah, I'm still going Wolves win 4-3.
All right, Alex.
I am very much aligned with Danny in terms of the Lopetegui hate. I want to caveat this, and it's not with whether or not Gary O'Neill is there or not. It's actually with whether or not Lopetegui is there. If Lopetegui is there, I think Wolves win. I really do. So it sounds like from what Brawley was saying, he will be there. So as much as it pains me to predict a Wolves win, I think O'Neill won't be there. So it could be a Steve Davis special, and I'll say it's 3-2. 3-2 to Wolves.
Okay. Paul?
I'm going for what's the complete opposite that can happen after today's shit show. And I'm going with new manager, but not so much of a new manager bounce. That complete opposite to 4-0 is a 0-0 draw.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
You want to know what would be the most Wolvesy and Jeff Shee thing ever? Is if they don't get rid of Gary O'Neill, and then Wolves come out and get a resounding 3-1 win over West Ham, and that saves Gary O'Neill's job through the end of December. I'm not saying that's the right thing, but can you not see that happening?
After
Yeah,
the last two,
I know
just
you all
don't know.
can. Everybody can see it. It's gonna be 3-1.
I just need one tweet thread from Guillaume Balaguer about how West Ham weren't that bad. This is all I need. This is all I beg, is that against Wolves they do something so shit that Guillaume Balaguer has to put out a tweet thread about how it's not so bad and Lopetegui's actually a world-class manager. Then after that, relegate us or whatever. I don't care. But I need that tweet thread.
3-1 Wolves.
No Stupid Questions is presented by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. So whether you're celebrating a Wolves victory or winding down after a day at work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of California's wine country with every sip. For a limited time, head to esfuerzowines.com and use the promo code WOLVES for a 15% discount on your wine purchases. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their products responsibly and in moderation.
Right before the
right.
show, I ordered. Right before the show, I did order some Esfuerzo wines.
There you go. Yeah, we've got a couple of bottles headed to the Patakis household. I think same for the Pauletti household, and they're special bottles, indeed, because they are bottles of Wolves branded wine. The 1-pack red blend and 1-pack Sauvignon Blanc now available at esfuerzowines.com. So if you want to add a little Wolves flair to your to wines for the holidays, maybe it's a great gift for that Wolves fan in your life who's certainly going to need something to get them through this dark patch. Head to esfuerzowines.com and don't forget to use the promo code Wolves, as you heard there, at checkout to get a discount. Excited to try that red blend and that Sauvignon Blanc. I bought a couple other bottles for my Wolves mate as well. So I'm excited for that. So let's get to these questions. You, the listener, can either X us at WLW Pod or email us hello@wholelotofwolves.com, as Drew from Pittsburgh does. Actually, Drew wrote us on X. After a hat trick of PKs, a hat trick of fouls on the same player leading to PKs, the oldest player to score in the EPL from a direct free kick, that was Ashley Young today. What record will be set against this defense on Monday? We didn't even talk about Evan Nielsen's drawing 3 pens and Clyburn having a hat trick of pen. Like, we didn't even get to that. But what bad defensive record can we set on Monday? Perhaps the first goalkeeper to score a brace. I actually don't know if I can come up with, in a fictional world, something worse than what's been going on, but I'm sure Josh could cook something up, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, the keeper scoring the brace is really a really good one. I don't know. Does West Ham have some kid that's going to get pulled out from his history test because they need him to come in and then jumps in and scores at the last second? I could see that.
They don't have anything good.
Well, that doesn't matter.
It's gonna be a goalkeeper brace, but it's actually gonna be a brace of own goals, and it's gonna be like Sam Johnstone trying to pass back to Lamina playing on the right side of a back three, but instead it's misaimed and goes straight into the goal or something.
Yeah.
Something literally impossible.
Maybe like Danny was saying earlier, we play 2 keepers and we're the first team to give up 4 or 5 goals with 2 keepers.
I'm just saying, if you made a deal with West Ham that we'd only start with 9 players to begin with, but 2 of them get to be keepers, you think they'd go for it?
Why does it have to be 9? Can we at least do 10 players?
I don't know. I just feel like you got to kick something in.
Man.
Any other nominations?
Would go right in between those 2 guys, and then they just look at each other and go, "Oh, you mad it?"
Yeah. Yikes. I'll tell you what will sting, and it's not a defensive record, but I very much could see one of Max Kilman's patented runs forward, and him actually finishing and scoring, and not celebrating against Wolves. Certainly not in the manner that Pedro Neto celebrated someone else's goal, opening up his legs. Okay.
You know Max Kilman played futsal?
Yeah. Oh, it could be a record set for that, for how many times that gets mentioned after he does score. Cato on X asks, which players should go in January? Now, we've kind of had this idea of guys seem like they're halfway out the door, but I don't know if a new manager changes that. Paul, what do you think? Like, if you had to forecast, like who's on their way out?
I'd probably say they're going to get rid of Sarabia based on just playing time, get him off the wage bill before his contract runs out, maybe. And like, even with this goalkeeping situation, like, it's a toss up of who's worse, but if that Saudi offer gets reignited for Saar, whatever it was, just move him on to ignore the noise that goes around these two number ones or whatever. So I don't know. The issue that we face is that like we're still thinking, oh well, at least we've got a strong bench, but how many of those players are centre mids? In theory, from tonight's starting lineup, you drop one of those centre midfielders. So who are you going to bring on? Is it like Lamina or Doyle? So you start to chip away at that bench, those squad players, and you look a little weak again. But I still think there's some imbalance on there in that you haven't got real good coverage across each of the different positions. I think if an offer came in for Geddes, even though he's been getting minutes or feedback, he'd want to go as well. So that
100%.
just says to me that you need a replacement. You need another attacker to come in and take that berth.
Am I crazy for because he's probably on his way out, wanting Geddes to play more? I know Danny said before, it doesn't mean you should start just because you're going off the bench. But I feel like the best motivator would be like, you have no value. You're staying in Wolverhampton until you do something and people want to come for you. So like all the spite goals for Geddes scoring in spite of Wolves, I feel like would be very helpful right about now.
I have an answer that you guys aren't going to like, but I think this could happen. I think Aitnery is going to go in January. I think he's kind of had it with Wolves.
That's just the way his face normally is, Josh.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The other day when he was like, to the fans and stuff, if an agent come in, I could kind of see it happening. Now, what we do at left back then, I don't know, unless they can recall Hugo. I mean, they may be stuck with Doc. I got a bad feeling. If an offer for Aitnery comes in, because it's not like he's helping them defensively, I could see them saying, "Well, we have to do this to fund your center back."
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just think Aitnery is one whose stock goes up and down with the fortunes of Wolves, and I just think that the teams that are looking for a left back are just going to be looking elsewhere unless Gary O'Neill truly turns it around and Wolves look like generationally good for December. I just don't see him going anywhere. But yeah, I think like Todd said in the live chat, I think that there's a non-zero chance that Hwang leaves in January, which is unfortunate to me. I'm a Hwang fan. I think that he's a very good player, and I think that he gets a lot of undeserved hate, especially when he's coming on as a sub in lost cause games, which is always a bit strange to me. But yeah, I think that given that there was interest there, in some ways that feels like that's almost what you were getting at, is like that's a place where there's a ton of value if you needed to fund a move and a player who's not really doing anything right now. Like, you could easily argue that Hwang is not at his peak, but he is slightly lower than his peak, and now is the time to cash in. And also he's playing like 10 minutes a game or something. So I don't think it would be a great choice, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it happening.
I would only be happy because it would mean I finally got a prediction right, and that my preseason prediction was that he would not finish the season here. But I also anticipated him playing more than he is playing and being more productive than he is playing and leaving on what I would call a good note. All right. Matthew Kowalis on X asks, who realistic center back targets will be? Kurt, we've been linked to a lot of different guys over the summer. We were linked to guys years ago, dragging on and on, like Elvedi, I believe, at Mönchengladbach. But do you have any center backs targeted that you feel like maybe we could see come and rescue us?
I think even Adam Webster picked up an injury as well, didn't he, as well? The last one that was mooted from Brighton. I think that was a hammy or something longish term.
Yeah.
No, I think the biggest worry is I don't know if we're going to spend the money to get someone who people know. I think the real challenge I've suddenly realized with Wolves and in the Fosun ownership is when we need someone just to fill a stopgap, it's usually someone you haven't heard of. So I think we'll be linked to names. I think the center back they ultimately bring in will be someone we haven't heard of or someone who's maybe up and coming or later in their career. Actually, I think that's the most likely. In January, we'll bring in a center back who's later in their career. And they'll be just good enough probably to start, but not any better than that. So it's hard to predict. I'd like to say it's someone more exciting, but we've seen the Fosun model for when they need someone desperately in January. It tends to be that sort of model, or someone who has an injury history and just so happens to be healthy right now, and that's the ideal person.
Great. It sounds like a great candidate.
You know, Man City aren't doing that great these days. Does Ruben Diaz want to take another look?
Yeah, I mean they're leaking goals almost at the rate Wolves are. Yeah, they're back on track. To Kurt's point, that's kind of what Dawson was. I feel like the veteran center back. We just need to be Googling guys who are from the Midlands that likely want to move home, right? Like we just needed like 32 to 35-year-old center backs who were born somewhere in the Midlands. It's like
how about Fosun finally deciding to get an American and they get Tim Ream?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Bonus question off of that to Kurt's point about spending the money. Money better spent. A couple additions to the roster or buying out Gary O'Neill and having someone come do something with all this talent.
Can we guarantee they're going to come do something with all the talent?
Yeah, to your point, I mean, like, what if you had to pick only one? You know, Gary O'Neill stays till the end of the season, but we spend, you know, what seems like a decent amount in January to shore up the squad versus, you know, Gary O'Neill gets sacked and a new manager comes in, but spending in January is like bare minimum. You know, if we're getting a player in, we're probably sending a player out, and it's probably not more than like 2 players in. Which do you think gives Wolves a better chance? For what it's worth, I think that Wolves probably stay up almost regardless because I think there are 3 worse teams, but that's an argument for another time. Of those 2 options, which do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
buying out. I'd say the buyout.
Oh, I don't know because like do we trust? Paul kind of has me convinced that I can't get excited about any candidates because we just shouldn't trust whoever they would hire. So to that point, it's almost better to change the players than it is the coach, right? I don't know. It's a tough spot.
That is difficult.
I think they'll ride. I would rather, I guess, ride it out with O'Neill, even though I'm like I think we're at the end of the rope with him, but both.
I had to figure out how to shorten that question into a Twitter poll because I'm interested in the breakdown, but I think it's very even.
Yeah. Okay, let's end with some fun because we haven't had much of it today. Brian Donnelly of Charlotte Wolves asked us on X, now that we can talk about Christmas, which it's all official, it's post-Thanksgiving, fair game, put up your lights, put up your tree, do everything, nobody can judge.
We got a tree. Done.
If the squad is having a white elephant party, that reminds me, I have one tomorrow. I got to get something for work. If the squad is having a white elephant party, who brings the best gift? Who is getting the scratchers from the gas station? And who's the most merciless gift stealer? Paul, let's start with you. White elephant party, best gift giver on Wolves.
I think that's got to be Cunha. Just generosity and assist making and being like a nice guy. I think he'll be really generous.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Kurt, easy way out with the lotto tickets, which again, great question, Brian, because now you've both reminded me and given me an idea for my white elephant party tomorrow.
Yeah, I think probably saw with the lotto tickets, just a gambler a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
so it fits. Or any of our center backs, and it could fit that as well.
Yeah, my take on that is that as Todd says in the chat, that Ryan Ain't is the one buying the last minute scratch offs. Jose Sa is the one who buys the thing that is actually something that he wants, and he's going to steal it later.
Yeah,
That's genius. That's genius.
Yeah, most merciless gift stealer. I guess that would qualify as that. Josh, what do you think? And why do I feel like you would be someone who would also do that?
I actually target usually what I want. And if I see alcohol, that's where I'm going. And if I don't care, I'll rip it from your hands, God damn it. The gift stealer. I am gonna say that it's a little sneaky, and it's Huang.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Because yeah, Koreans, man, again, they'll just be like, yeah, I want that. Sorry, I want that.
Again, he can say that he's married to a Korean, lives
That's
with,
right.
He's married into a family. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like it's gonna be Bentley. It's just all YOLO for him at this point. Like I'm number 2 goalkeeper to 2 number 1s.
Yeah.
What the hell else do I have to lose?
On the
or he's number 3 to 2 number 2s.
Oh yeah. On the goalkeeping front, it's definitely not Johnston. He's just standing there waiting for something to happen, letting it all unfold in front of him.
Johnston does not bring any gifts.
No, he doesn't. And if we're equating it to football, I guess like the best ball retainer would be Zhao. I don't know, the way he wrestles the ball away from folk. I mean, his MMA experience is like really shows through in the way he plays. So maybe in a contentious gift stealing scenario, I would back him. Thanks for the break from reality, Brian of Charlotte Wolves, and thanks to everyone who wrote in their no stupid questions on X at WLW Pod. Email hello@wholelotofwolves.com, and thanks to our friends at Esfuerzo Wines. Don't forget, once again, the 1-pack red blend and 1-pack Sauvignon Blanc. Go ahead and get it at esfuerzowines.com. Support Wolves, support Esfuerzo, support the pod. Use the promo code Wolves at checkout when you do.
All right, Kurt, how can everybody get a hold of you?
As you mentioned, I'm on Twitter as Original Bip. If you want to see me, it's usually me complaining about sports. So if that's your cup of tea, please follow me. If not, always appreciate meeting other Wolf supporters. So definitely reach out.
And sorry that Alabama's going to make the playoff and can't.
I know. I was hoping we'd have a reason to hate each other.
Thanks to Danny on the socials, Alex producing, and you, the listener. We hope in some way that this has been somewhat of a cathartic listen. We'll take the reviews if you've got them on your podcast platform of choice. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of this helps to grow and increase the exposure of a whole lot of Wolves. So the night is always darkest just before the dawn. So instead of going down even further, let's say up the mighty Wolves.